Excellent. So, Everest. What was it about this specific story around Everest that appealed to you as a filmmaker?
Well, pretty much everything, you know. The story, I remember it went from '96 when it happened. I was having my first daughter. And at the same, you know, and I heard this incredible story about this man stuck on the mountain with his wife pregnant at home. And it kind of, you know, got to me being in the same situation. I kind of forgotten about it, you know. I knew there were books written about it, and then when I got sent the script, it all came back to me, you know. I loved being able to make a big movie where actually had real characters and not have characters that have to fall into conventions of Hollywood script writing, you know, villains and fantastic heroes that will save the day, and being able to dig into the truth of the story. Then, of course, there is the mountain, you know, and having a possibility of creating a visuals of that mountain with new technique and also by immersing yourself into nature. Having those two things meet, it was very challenging, and challenge is something I go for.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. One of the things I found most interesting was the way it builds towards a disaster movie, but it doesn't start off like that in terms of the way you develop the characters and way you introduce to them. How did you go about building the strong characters beforehand, before we get to the mountain itself?
First of all, it was very important well, in the beginning when I came to the script, it changed, you know, throughout the process of getting it ready. But there was a lot of scenes about people at home, you know, and all this what those scenes did for me were basically expositionally explain a character. You know, okay, so he's the guy who's angry to his wife, or he's the guy that you know, or he's the selfish asshole, or he's the good guy who's, you know, does this for the children, or whatever it is. And I felt I want to strip all that away and let you go on a journey with a bunch of characters. In the beginning, you might like, oh, who's that? Oh, that's so many characters. How am I going to get my head around it? And then if you just relax, it will come to you through the movie, and you will learn to know some better than others, and someone best, you know. And that way, as when you travel with people, you can go on a you know, buy your ticket to Ibiza or whatever, you know, some of people you like, and you talk to them, and others you will, you know, not spend so much time with. And that way, having a chance to understand the climbing society, how people, you know, do this, having all the details about what is done. I love those kind of details about climbing and altitude sickness and all that, you know, because, you know, I didn't want this kind of characters of epiphany, you know, oh, he's doing it because his father used to beat him when he was young, or something like, you know, bollocks like that, you know. So, but we have one scene when, you know, when the characters are asked why they do this. And to my experience, climbers can't really answer that question. Although everyone has a different answer, most of them very unsatisfying. And that's the truth of the matter, you know.
One of the characters does explain why he does it, the Beck character.
Yeah.
So is that based on reality, his
That's
explanation?
based on his explanation from his book called The Left for Dead. And I think reading that book gave me, you know, real. And that's why he didn't say it in front of the journalist, he said it in front of his friend, which makes much more sense to me. He wouldn't open up like that to a journalist, you know. And I think and the story really in his book, it says how his marriage was totally over, and because of his depressions, and how kind of, you know, he found his family on the mountain, you know, which is it's a very touching story to me.
Mm-hmm. Also filmed in IMAX and 3D. What were the difficulties of doing that? Which obviously just adds to the complexities for you as a filmmaker.
Yeah, well, it was a challenge, you know. It's a fantastic challenge. I hadn't done that before, and I was like, you know, okay, great. You know, it was my choice to make it in 3D because I thought you would get much more volume out of the mountain. You get much more feeling of the mountain, the depth and the distances, you know. And it's the perfect movie, you know, for me, because I don't like special effects and 3D so much, you know, in kind of, you know, explosions and stuff like that. But I love it to make things more real, to actually be able to create a world that you couldn't create differently, you know. So it's all about the depth, you know, and the height. I didn't want to scare you like, oh, it's more like, oh my God, oh, that's so high, you know. And if you can do that, I call it the wow effect, you know, rather than the shock effect, you know.
Mm-hmm. And finally, I just want to ask you about how you managed to get such a great cast together, and how willing were they to go through the challenges of climbing Everest?
Well, they were quite willing, the ones, you know, I approached, you know, in the beginning. But when, you know, two months into the shoot, it wasn't, you know, always like that. But, you know, I think then towards the end got really happy to having done that. But I think for the same reason, their story, and the way we wanted to approach it in the real way was very tempting to people who, constantly, approached with really, stories that, cliched, saturated with all kinds of Hollywood bollocks, And I think that's fine, that's fun, but it's also one of the reasons why all of us go into this, because we want to tell real stories of real people and hopefully can touch somebody and affect them,
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey, you